Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Bradshaw, and I'm a PhD student in the statistics department. I'm happy to be here today and have the chance to share my work about estimating the true incidence of sexual assaults on college campuses. To give you some background, every year, colleges and universities in the US have to publish a crime and safety report that includes the number of reported sexual assaults on their campuses. But it's generally recognized that many sexual assaults never get reported in the first place, so they don't make it into the published numbers, and this can make it difficult to actually interpret the published data. An example of what I mean here is imagine the number of reported assaults at a school jumps up from one year to the next. That could be driven by an increase in the reporting rate, which is a good thing, or the true number of assaults could have increased, which is a bad thing. Two opposite conclusions from the same data, and with only the reported number, we aren't able to distinguish between them. So my project focuses on pulling in expertise from outside sources to break that tie and identify the most plausible values for the true number of assaults. The main takeaway is that while the reported numbers don't tell the whole story, we can make improvements. Other key observations are that in the last 5 years or so, the aggregate number of assaults reported by all colleges has been growing something like 10% a year, but it looks like this is driven more by an increase in the reporting rate than the actual number of assaults occurring. On the other hand, trends at individual schools are very diverse. Some schools don't seem to have any functional reporting mechanism, and some schools barely seem to have an underreporting problem at all. Next to the methodology, what we get to see is the reported number of assaults. We assume that there is an unknown true number of assaults that actually happened, and each one of those assaults gets reported or not reported with some probability, which is also unknown. And that is how we generate the number of reported assaults that we actually see. If we're modeling all schools aggregated together, there's one probability for each year, or if we're modeling individual schools, each school gets its own probability in each year. This is where we encode external research. The National Crime Victimization Survey gives us the approximate range of how many sexual assaults occurred per capita over the relevant time frame. So we want to assign low probability to scenarios where the total number of assaults are far outside of that range. Similarly, research from the Justice Department gives an approximate range for the reporting rate for sexual assault over that time frame. So again, we want to assign lower probability to scenarios where the reporting probability wouldn't be consistent with that information. Then what this method does essentially is find a compromise between our prior beliefs about total assaults and reporting probabilities and the data that we actually observed. That lets us quantify how plausible we think different scenarios are. If we aggregate all the data for schools and take this approach, the graph on the right shows what we get out. On top are our estimates for the reporting probability, then the bottom is the true number of assaults that we're estimating. Of course, there's some uncertainty in all the numbers, but it does give us a good sense that reporting probability is increasing, whereas the true number of assaults doesn't have a compelling trend up or down over those years. You can make that same type of analysis for individual schools as well. Thinking about challenges in this project, the fundamental challenge is disentangling the true number of assaults from the reporting rate. And as we've discussed, the strategy there is to incorporate subject matter expertise, but also be careful and check that you haven't relied so heavily on those assumptions that you swamp the signal in your data. Another challenge was sourcing the data. For modeling, we also used information about the total number of in-person students at each school, the campus type, either urban, suburban, or rural, and the percent of women in the student body. And those lived in a different database than the sexual assault data, which itself lived in a completely different place from the criminology research. But I think this is just often the reality of an interdisciplinary project. One more challenge is that this particular type of modeling for underreported data hasn't gotten enough attention for there to be convenient off-the-shelf tools for fitting a model and estimating the quantities we're interested in. So it required some ad hoc components to get a procedure that felt appropriate. Finally, turning to the benefits of the project, the most basic benefit is that it helps give us a broader picture of the campus climate than just the reported numbers alone. But going beyond that, if we could make this type of information available to administrators, like a Title IX coordinator, it would be helpful for assessing the effectiveness of the school's initiatives, both to reduce sexual assault and to familiarize people with reporting resources, and could possibly even inform choices about where to make changes and improvements moving forward. With that, I'll turn it over for questions. Thank you so much.